Asan. For many Indians, it is an unfamiliar term. Asan is a derogatory slur for Indians that still occasionally surfaces in Chinese conversations and social media. It's rarely used outside of the virtual world, but imagine a heated chat room full of Chinese ultranationalists speaking about Balwan, Tibet, or any of the current causes of geopolitical tensions between India and China. You will hear the word Asan a lot, being used to disparage those impudent Indians, those lackeys of Western imperialism, those superstitious caste-ridden people who never had a revolution. Asan, the lot of you, or thus will shout the online troll, but those social media warriors sitting comfortably and anonymously in their chat rooms, using the word, will be at the same time not be aware of its origin. Its exact origin remains disputed, but one of the most enduring explanations traces it back to Shanghai, during the period of British colonialism, during an age the Chinese have dubbed the century of humiliation. You see, the story of Asan is not really about India. It's about empire, and how colonialism shaped the interactions between two world civilizations. To understand where the word came from, we first need to understand what the Chinese call the century of humiliation. Beginning in 1839 with the First Opium War, China entered a period of repeated military defeats at the hands of the Western powers and later Japan. Defeat after defeat forced the Qing Empire to sign unequal treaties, surrender territory, pay enormous indemnities, and grant foreign nations extraordinary privileges inside Chinese cities. Shanghai, Tianjin, Hangzhou, and several other ports were divided into foreign concessions. They were Chinese cities, but within them large districts were effectively ruled by Britain, France, America, and other colonial powers. Chinese police did not patrol these streets. Chinese courts often had no jurisdiction. Chinese sovereignty simply stopped at the edge of the concession. For many Chinese historians, this period symbolizes the collapse of imperial China and the intrusion of foreign domination into everyday life. Shanghai was one such foreign concession, a British-run colonial city. The British ran the courts, the administration, and the police of this bustling city. But how could a relatively small number of Europeans govern hundreds of thousands, eventually millions, of its Chinese residents? Britain found the answer to this problem from across the Himalayas. India, a civilization as ancient as China, was now merely a jewel in the British crown, a colonized state under foreign subjugation. From India, Britain drew vast revenues, raw materials, and one of the largest volunteer armies in the world. But India was more than a colony. It became the empire's strategic headquarters in Asia. Throughout the 19th century, the British Empire increasingly relied upon Indian manpower to sustain imperial rule across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. Indian soldiers guarded the Suez Canal, fought in Sudan, occupied Burma, patrolled Singapore, and served throughout Britain's colonial possessions. Now China became the new frontier for these colonial troops. Thousands of Indians, particularly Sikh policemen from Punjab, were recruited into colonial police forces in Shanghai, Hong Kong, and other treaty ports. They patrolled streets, guarded foreign businesses, dispersed demonstrations, and enforced colonial regulations. To British officials, they were loyal imperial servants. To many ordinary Chinese, however, they represented something very different. When workers organized strikes, Indian policemen dispersed them. When anti-colonial protests erupted, Indian policemen stood behind British officers. When colonial laws were enforced, it was frequently Indian officers who carried out the arrests. When Chinese citizens encountered the authority of the British Empire in everyday life, the face beneath the colonial uniform was often that of an Indian. The resentment directed against imperial rule increasingly attached itself not to British officials but to the colonial intermediaries who visibly maintained the system, i.e., the Indians. It was in this political atmosphere that the term Asan entered popular usage. According to a popular account, Shanghai residents, resentful of the overbearing Indian policemen, enjoyed ridiculing them by mimicking their pretentious way of repeating the phrase, I say, eventually transforming it into the nickname Asan. By the early 20th century, Asan had become a dismissive, often derogatory label for Indians. One cannot be observant of the historical irony of all this. For much of history, India and China encountered one another as peer civilizations. Buddhist monks crossed the Himalayas carrying scriptures. Chinese pilgrims such as Faxian and Xuanzang journeyed to India's great universities in search of knowledge. Merchants sailed the Indian Ocean exchanging silk, spices, porcelain, and ideas. Their relationship was defined not by conquest, but by commerce, scholarship, and cultural exchange between two of the world's oldest civilizations. The 19th century marked a profound rupture. Under British imperial rule, that ancient relationship was fundamentally transformed. India became the base from which Britain projected its power into East Asia. Indian-grown opium was shipped to China. Indian soldiers fought Britain's wars in China. Indian policemen patrolled the streets of Shanghai and Tianjin. For the first time in centuries, many Chinese encountered Indians not as monks, merchants, or fellow Asians, but as agents of a foreign empire. Even though the Indian policeman enforcing British rule over Chinese civilians was himself a colonial subject, he possessed authority over the Chinese but not sovereignty over his own country. But this irony was lost to history and to the Chinese of Shanghai. Seen in this context, a san is not merely a racial slur. It is a linguistic fossil from the age of empire, preserving the memory of a period when India and China did not first encounter one another as independent Asian civilizations, but through the unequal structures of British imperial rule. Perhaps that is the deeper lesson of this forgotten history. Colonialism did more than redraw maps or conquer territories. It reordered relationships between colonized peoples themselves, leaving behind memories, stereotypes, and tensions that sometimes outlived the empire that created them.